All right, my friends, here I am at the bottom of this screen. Buddy, let's get a jadoob. Just a little bit of a jadoob. I think I should be over here, buddy. Put yourself over there. I didn't plan it this way, but there are 2 games that have been submitted to review, and I will look at those. Let's put it at the end of the show, but I just had that up, so that's what we'll do at the end. And what we'll do now, though, is we'll go here, and we're going to do the Under 1,000 Graduates show. Something I mostly enjoy. I just got back from a trip. Exhausted, dude. Exhausted. So I'm just going to go real mellow. Go real mellow on this stream. Okay, 7 Stitch has graduated again. I remember 7 Stitch's first graduation, and let's read what they wrote. Haven't played much due to life getting in the way. I hear that. Between November 23 and February 24. I only managed to play a few Blender games. Since the start of March, I have had more free time to work on my chess, which has allowed me to get back to the Polgar puzzles, everyone's first chess workbook, and able to play more Blender games and a few 30-minute rapid games, which is excellent. Hope to continue on the chess work and graduate again. I love the new update on the Dojo scoreboard. Keep up the great work, Dojo crew. Great. Yeah, and we are working really hard, doing less streams and less Dojo talks than normal because we're getting ready for this Dojo 3.0. And the intention is for May 1st. I don't know, man. We'll see if we get that May 1st thing. We'll see. So let's just take a quick look. We have a good number. Let's call it around 12 people graduating the Under 1,000 today, and then tomorrow I'm going to do the people above. Usually, much more than 22. In fact, why I broke this show into 2 parts was because we were getting monster shows, and I felt like I wasn't getting enough time and energy to give to each individual profile. In any case, it might be a slightly shorter stream, but as I said at the beginning, we're going to look at the 2 games in that queue before this goes down. Before we end the show, at the very end. So here's 7 Stitch, Irish chess noob. It's funny, I'm pretty sure 7th graduated before we had this new newsfeed feature where you can follow people. Dude, is there an Irish club? No, I bet there is, though. If there isn't 7 Stitch, you need to make one, Bows. You need to make one. Now, 7th is about ready almost to graduate again. Had a nice little jump here. And let's look at how they did it. So, a lot of work, a lot of games and analysis. Good. Okay, that looks pretty good. And if we look at the training plan and go back 1, oh yeah, they did pretty much everything. That's beautiful. And you know, the Dojo program, by the way, does really kind of take account of the fact that it's easier to graduate at the lower levels than higher, in the sense that where here 7th has gotten almost all the way through, and it only took them, I think, 21 hours or something like that to watch. We can see here, 21 hours. Now, maybe it was a little bit more than that, but you know what I'm saying? Like, whereas like a higher graduation, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of hours. So I think that's a cool thing, and honestly, something we're going to keep in mind with the dialing in of 3.0. There's a lot of things in 3.0. I'm not even sure people will notice the difference. But we are thinking deeply, using stats and all kinds of stuff, information, feedback, on dialing down the requirements really well. Okay, let's look at a game from 7 Stitch. It's got 6. This one was actually, maybe 7 Stitch has done nothing in terms of submitting games since they when they had their break. That's what it looks like, in fact. Let's take a look. This was at the 0 to 300. So yeah, this is an old one. This is an old one. I'll tell you what, we'll fly through this, but I kind of, the idea of the show is to look at a more recent game. That's a mouse slip, he says. his opponent doesn't notice. Unfortunately, we don't. Just go back, okay? There's some weird stuff going on here. There's some weird stuff going on. I'll tell you guys what. Let's table this one because this is an old game, and go back to the news feed here. And so, what we want from Seven Stitch in his return, their return to chess, is to do more of these because this was a good start, and this happened before their chess break. Okay, here we go. All right. So, Kraai, get back. And now we're looking at Afro Horse. And we're going to follow Afro Horse. Now, this one, let's just say, this one is, it's kind of incorrect. Because here we're saying they're 1,000 normalized, where, you know, they're way up top. So either they're going to graduate again. Let's just look at what's going on with Afro Horse. It looks like Afro Horse, they've definitely done some work. So it's not like they just joined the dojo. I've done a lot of this stuff. Okay, let's see if they've got a... So let's just say the obvious. Afro Horse belongs in a higher cohort. No clubs yet. We got some games, though. Let's take a look. So. Now, one move here that looks very nice for white is to pop black with d4. It's a free tempo because we want to develop, we need to move our pawns in order to get our bishops out. So this is a nice free move to make. Weird. Weird. And that looks poor because you're hanging a pawn. That's right. Okay. Now, when you say I'm not sure if b4 was bad or good, if you're losing a pawn, that's probably a bad move. So one thing I want to say is you will play a lot of people who give away time, and you will probably also give away time. And if you can become religious about not giving away time, then your game will radically improve. It's one of the easiest things to learn. So, for example, a5 doesn't really help black's pieces get out. And you should do what? Knight f3, something like that. Bring your people out. Okay, good. Weird. Not really bringing their people out. Weird. Knight on the rim is dim. Better to be on f6. Good. Weird. Not bringing their people out. And here, I'm really happy that you didn't take, because this knight is incredibly bad, and taking would enable the knight to escape. Good. And now you won a pawn. It looks great. And now you play bishop g7. Okay, I think you could have wailed on him with knight c7 check. That looks devastating. Okay, so boom. But this, honestly, let's just say it's also devastating. The rook can't move without losing Mr. Knight over here. And is king e7 a mistake? Kind of, sort of, but what is the guy supposed to do? What is the guy supposed to do at this point? Thank you. Okay. Oh, little fancy. Okay, this is incorrect because maybe it's not horrendous, but what you want to do is make sure that no drama hits you here. So bishop f3 makes a lot of sense, just to counteract any evil coconut thing they might try to pull on you with g2. Okay, now you're getting me worried. Oh, too fancy. Thank you very much. So we just got rid of our main worry. So knight e5 wasn't it. That wasn't it. Thank you very much. And this is what we call the yard sale. Why, black is just giving us everything. Okay, let's talk about this. Rook fd1 doesn't make any sense, right? You could bring it back, say a check. You could play d4. You could play h3, kick the knight. You could take that knight. Good move. Good move. Good move. Good move. Ah, you're just wiping it up. That's the way I want to see it. Now, something I say on every under 1,000 show is the path to 1,000 should mostly be you taking your opponent's pieces like this, because they will give them to you, and then trading stuff off like we're doing here and mating. So let's check the technique. Good. Let's trade. Yeah. Okay, a little weird. By the way, this is mate already. We still had mate. Okay. You're taking your time, but honestly, as long as you get the job done, we don't care here at the dojo. We don't care. You're getting the job. Oh! Oh, no, that's making me worried. You're still okay, but it's making me worried. Good, that's a good mating powder. Okay, so there it is, Afro Horse. And as we said, we saw earlier, Afro Horse has already, in fact, gone above 1,000, at least with that normalized Lichess stuff. Mop up on aisle 3, please. That's a good comment summary. Mop up on aisle 3, please. That's exactly what happened here. Okay, let's go back. Now we have Pawn Star, great name. And Pawn Star says I think he means everyone's first chess workbook, EFWB, was super solid. Yeah, and I think one of the things that's great about the program is we are developing what I would call institutional knowledge, right? So, like, we have materials that people are using. We're seeing through feedback which work, which don't, and we're even doing this statistical regression on which activities produce the most gain. That's one of the cool things that will be hidden behind the requirements in 3.0. In any case, this one I am very happy with. It's a very simple first workbook that our lower cohorts are going through, and people are doing it and they are making progress. So let's check out Pawn Star. All right. So 405, beautiful progress. Let's follow. 32 hours of work. I think we wanted to go down one. So, yeah, no games. Let's see what's going on this one here. So somehow, usually when someone graduates, they'll have less hours on the new cohort. But let's look at this tactics here. Oh, this looks great. This looks really good. I'm going to do a review of everyone's first chess workbook at some point in the near future. And I'm kind of waiting for my 9-year-old friend, now 10-year-old friend, to finish the book and help me give his perspective on the use of the book. But I've also got many people like Pawn Star at least giving me, very positive, if short, feedback. Clubs? No clubs. Me versus opponent. Let's look. Good. 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 Beautiful development so far. Good. Okay. Okay. So, what is wrong with bishop g5? You are moving a developed piece twice. You'll hear me say it probably more than once. Try to become religious about not moving the developed piece twice. So, candidate moves that aren't that move would be castles, queen d2, for example. Okay, incorrect, because now you've moved the piece, a pawn that didn't help you develop. It does have a threat, though, that your opponent doesn't see. Okay, your opponent doesn't notice that on pawn takes, you will then be threatening this coconut. Let's see if you get it when you say b4. I felt like I had to launch a queenside attack because I felt that I didn't have much going on attack-wise. My light square bishop couldn't do much on the king side because of the pawns. My dark square bishop was trapped. My knights were defending but couldn't provide any attack due to my opponent's pawn structure. Now I see that maybe I could have played dc. attacking undefended pawn on d6, and then pinning the knight to the queen if responded with bc. Good. I would have played dc. Absolutely. Now, let's talk about this for a second. One of the things that I want you to see that I don't like about d5 is that not only are you not developing, okay? So what would be a default developing move? Rook e1. That would be a good move. With d5, what you're doing is not only is it a pawn move that doesn't help your pieces, but it also blocks the bishop. It does, I think, set up a trap because black shouldn't allow us to win this coconut here. Now, the problem with b4 is not only that you missed queen takes d6, but that it's not a developing move. So again, we want to move like rook e1 or some kind of queen move. Of course, better would have been dc, but I'm just saying, if you didn't see that, that's the kind of thing you should be looking for. All right, snip. This is a controversial move by black because that bishop wasn't great, and a kind of standard thing that black often does here is to play knight f4. And the idea is it's a very annoying knight there, and if we ever take, in general, we'll want to take back this way to free this coconut and to free this square for the knight d7. This one's very clever. I don't know if I like it, but it's a very clever recapture because it shows that you understand that you would like to open this file. Now, I think tactically there's a problem because black could have gone snip and then snip. And it's a little bit uncomfortable for us. So, for example, it's not just the pawn. Like, both of our coconuts are touched. And if we defend them like this, then this hurts us, right? And it's just an unpleasant situation. So, he missed it. A4. Now, I want to stress, you're being fancy. Okay? You're being fancy. And now, a couple things. Whenever you put your king in the way of a diagonal here, you could call it a developing move to play king h1 just to get out of the way. So that's kind of what I'd be looking for. This is abstract, and again, queen b6 would hurt you. Knight h5, horrendous move. No bueno. What is the knight doing here? Nothing. Notice, sometimes it makes sense to put the knight there if you can drop it here, but now our Mr. Pawn is just sitting real nice. Why are they coconuts? I don't know, that's just what they're called. You know, when someone touches your coconuts, it's a little bit unpleasant. Okay, now you played b5. And I guess you missed, and I like this note, you missed that they could just play c5. And something I want you to see about this, okay? Because a lot of beginner level players love to put their bishop here and then push the pawn here, is that you've killed your bishop, right? Now the bishop has no scope, and it's gone from maybe a pretty aggressive, cool looking piece to now one that has no scope at all, right? I don't know about a6. That move doesn't look right because we're losing the pawn on a5. Yeah. Boom. And then let's read what you wrote. I became scared of losing the bishop and missed the fork. But Baus, you got a choice here. You're gonna have to take either the pawn or go for this madness with knight b6. Right? My first chess pieces were made from coconuts. Okay, so you guys, rook b1, and the guy takes here. Terrible. Now you can recapture, and you haven't lost all your coconuts. No, you gotta play. He's got to take one of these nuts. You know. These nuts, one of them, win the piece. So let me stress something. I say this every grad show. Going from 0 to 1,000, you can learn to develop your pieces. It's a pretty easy skill to learn and then become religious about. Much harder will be not giving away your coconuts for free. And here, you gave away your coconuts for free and your opponent didn't take it. So as we get stronger, that will be the skill that you need to hone, because that's where the game is actually being decided. That's where we see who makes it to 1,000 and who doesn't. It's precisely this kind of thing, right? And now you get it back. You don't lose the full coconut. Good. Okay. Queen E1, kind of a nice fancy move. And F4. Now, I want to say, I'm going to give black full props. We should have taken on F5, by the way. We should have just taken this thing. But I'm going to give black a lot of props for this idea. This is very positional. Now, it's weird to give somebody props that just missed all this stuff, but I like that they opened this bishop. Kind of a nice move, interesting. Now we should investigate G4, knocking the knight to win the pawn. Rook E8. Boom. Bishop E8. Okay, here you write something great. Looking back, this was the move that I believe won me the game. My opponent was nervous after this move. Well, they just blundered all their coconuts. I'd be nervous too. He just lost all his coconuts. You know? Come on. And then what do they need to do? It's hard. If they take this one, they lose this one. So what we should do is put a question mark after Rook E8. What am I trying to say? When you annotate your games, the under 1,000, you should really be saying to yourself, somebody hung stuff in this game, and I need to understand when it happened and why. What was the mistake that led to them hanging stuff? What was the move that led to me being able to exploit that hanging of stuff? Okay? Sounds trivial, but that is the path to 1,000. Not giving away your coconuts for free and taking the free coconuts, right? So exclam for sure, yeah. Boom. Now that's a fancy move. I saw that I could push the pawn to check the king. Okay, fancy. You could, of course, just move your bishop back or take that pawn on D6. Nice move, okay. And now another nice move is E7, because you're going to queen this coconut. And then do just resign. Now, if I was black, I would say don't resign yet. Ask the queen a question, and let's test white to see if they can convert this position. For the GM game, yes, resignation, but this is not a GM game, right? Okay, so let's continue this story. That's Pawn Star. Pawn Star is making good progress. And you can see, Pawn Star, what you need to improve, right? You can see it. All right, next up we have William Wortman. And dude is 500 now. Okay. So. Now there might be some confusion because William Wortman hit 273. And sometimes, okay, let me just explain. This is a common misconception. There's all these rating systems, right? Lichess, Chess.com, Over the Board, you know, the Dutch Federation. There's all kinds of stuff out there. And what we did at the dojo is we had to normalize it down to one rating system so we could organize the cohorts. So when you hit 500 Chess.com, that isn't the top, that isn't making you to 500, right? And so here you can see this is your normalized rating. And I think, I'm not the tech side of this whole operation, but I think you generally get a notification that says something like, hey, Bows, this is probably not time for you to graduate. Yeah. So let's leave that one there. Well, let's see. Well, Elite Chess is over. I'm confused. Let's take a quick look at William Wortman. Okay. So, I've done some non-dojo work. Clubs, adult improver. Games, nothing. Okay, so in general, let's just remember that on it's your preferred metric, so whichever rating system you use the most, and there's a variety of things telling you when you are going to graduate, right? So, for example, If you were in the 500 to 600 cohort, your next graduation would be 850. And obviously that's a long road away for you. Okay, so that was William Wharton. Next up, we have Whale Driver. I like that name. Whale Driver says, the puzzle rushes and puzzles in the books really help with board vision, but I've got a long way to go. I'm still blundering way too frequently. Now, that's a great comment because it shows what the basic struggle is in the under 1,000 cohorts, right? It's not fancy. And when we talk about people hanging stuff, I think we should stress that it sounds like a simple thing, but in contrast to learning how to develop your pieces, which if you get religion about it, you can do pretty well. You can do a grandmaster level in the under 1,000. In contrast to that, you really do need a little bit of board vision to stop hanging your stuff. So stuff like the Polgar mates, for example, and the basic tactics that we're having you do over and over again, you get kind of like that vision of what's attacking what, right? And it takes a while. That's why the quest to 1,000, it's a long quest, is really all about that, just not hanging stuff and taking the free stuff. Okay, so let's take a look at Whale Driver. Heath from St. Augustine, 747 captain with a chess addiction. Nice. I enjoy playing guitar and astronomy as my other pastime. Send me a friend request on Chess.com and let's play. Definitely going to follow Whale Driver. 747, now, not an expert, but I think that's the big old thing. I think that's the big old plane, boss. You know what, too? I bet he's playing Chess.com over there in the plane, and I don't even blame him. I think, like, after they take off and they're just cruising in the air, now he might not be able to admit it, and they might not always have the internet connection to the Chess.com, but I bet dude is sitting up there in the air, looking at the clouds go by, having some coffee that a really cute stewardess brings to him, and just enjoying life in chess, dude. Maybe doing a little dojo work on the side. Dude, that's amazing. It's amazing. Oh, I just had a whole picture of Whale Driver up in the sky over there. All right, let's take a look. So Whale Driver's made it, and as we saw in the last graduation, it's 850 is the next one. Doing some good work. Let's go see how they did it. 8 hours. 8 hours. A solid macro diet here with the tactics. Boom. Here you see it. Everyone's first chess workbook. Made in ones. Very nice. Clubs. Chess dads and moms. I'm in that club too. And let's take a look at this recent game by Whale Driver. Maybe doing some stuff in the ocean there in St. Augustine as well. Okay, so here's a good example of me trying to preach religiousness about the pieces. What the move C3 tells me is that Whale Driver at some point watched a YouTube video or something about the London system, and it was just like create this little triangle. Now, what I want people to do, and this will serve them so well after they get past 1,000. Again, right now, it's the move C3 isn't going to be what determines the game. It's going to be somebody hanging something. But what you can learn now is simply to say, look, C3 is not a principled move in this position. By the way, there's other positions in the London where it would make sense. Here, it just doesn't. So learning the structure of the London stuff is actually doing you a disservice. Then we ask ourselves, all right, I don't know anything about chess. What would the principled moves be? I can tell you. Boom, 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 boom. All of those are principled moves. Those are the ones that make sense. Those are the ones that the GMs have played. Okay? Good. Now, I just want you to get a little religion. What's the problem? You're moving a developed piece twice, right? Now, I get your fear. You didn't want to, have the coconut be doubled. Fine. But more important is time. So what would the candidate moves be? Here, 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 here. Let him take. Or if you want, take his bishop. But don't lose time if you can avoid it. Bishop takes may be mildly controversial because now they've developed our rook. Good. Good. Okay. He spots it, and knight g5. Okay, what am I going to say about this move? I'm going to say that's developing a piece twice. Who's crying out in pain? These guys. They need to be developed, bud. And now you're in a little bit of grief because e5 is a good move, putting pressure now against your uncastled king. Now, one thing I want to stress is that a reason to become religious at this level about, it's at any level, but I always want to make it the point for this level, about developing your stuff as quickly as possible, is when you don't, that's when your opponent will have tactical opportunities. When you do it and they don't, that's when you will have tactical opportunities. So for example, in this position, black can snip. There's no take here because of the rook. So you got to take this way, and then you say, thank you very much for the pawn. Thank you very much. So knight g4, and you said, thank you for all your free stuff. And now you did, I'm going to go ahead and say this was a, at the very least, that's a good looking move. That's a good looking move. Yeah. Now, your opponent goes passive here and plays rook f8. By the way, I'm going to go ahead and say this is a 1,000 plus move that you did here, bishop g6, because you're seeing a whole combination with fg, queen takes, and then this knight is hanging. Brilliant. Okay. Your opponent, though, because they still have their development stuff going, it's not an over. They should consider this move and counterplay against the king. So, what is rook f8 ultimately? It's a move that doesn't develop. You took, I don't like it, because now this happens. Actually, maybe I do like it, but I like it only if we have an answer to king f7. And I don't see an answer, honestly. Okay, so this was a mistake. Bam! That's a nice move. And then you took with the queen, and you said, should have taken with the knight. Absolutely. Let's read what you write. But being up in material, I was okay trading off queens to simplify the board at this point. Okay. So let's just note, when you do this, do a variation. So for example, my variation would go check to the miserable king, king, check to the miserable king. Boom. And we're going to mate them and win their queen. We're going to do both. We're going to get both of those things. All right, queen f6. Good, good, good. e4, a stupid move hanging my d pawn. Okay, again, why is it happening? Because you're not bringing your people out. What would be a good move to bring your people out? King e2. And then the rooks are connected, and then you're ready to start moving them on over, right? Hanging your stuff. Good move. Again, what is going to decide the fate of progress at this level? People hanging stuff. Thank you very much. Yard sale. So someone said in the chat earlier, clean up on aisle 3, please. We got a mess on aisle 3. Please come to clean it up. Oh, that's a fancy move, I think. Oh. Good. Good. We went for a cheap mate. It's okay. We can go for a cheap mate. That's okay. Uh-oh, our rook was hanging. Uh-oh, it's a little sloppy here. There we go. There we go. As long as we don't... There we go. It was almost stalemate, but we did it. So whale driver. Religiosity about development, and then recognizing that what is determining you getting to the next level is not hanging stuff. The stuff about religiosity, about development will help you, but really it'll be a stepping stone for later growth. Just something easy to learn. For now, it's about not hanging stuff. And when we go back and look at your, let's say your training plan, you know, when you do the tactics like the Polgar mates and stuff, and let's say the puzzle rush, all of that is going to be helping you not hang stuff, board vision. The end game is going to be stuff like mating, right? Okay, genius. So I like that one. Next up, we have Teuton, who I recognize. We've had him here on the show before. And UK Adult Improver, 634. We're slowly getting stronger. Okay. Activity. Let's go back one. Now my guess is they probably aren't logging everything here. Probably not logging everything. Clubs. Okay, cool. Games. Fairly recent. All right, let's take a look. All right, so here's a problem that we often see, sometimes even in the higher cohorts. People are using the computer to tell them what's right or wrong. And the problem is that we need to understand why maybe this move is incorrect. If we don't, it's just some computer telling us something. From a principled perspective, d5 might not be that wrong, for example. Black definitely wants to bring out their stuff, right? So I'm not even going to criticize it at this point, because to me it's more of a thing to understand why it's a problem for later levels. Okay, I'm tempted to, but I'm not going to explain it now because that's not an actual problem. And white doesn't exploit it. So if it was an inaccuracy, well, we would want to know why, right? And what white should do about it. But honestly, it's a principled move, so I'm going to let it slide. Okay. Okay. Boom. Okay. Okay. Okay, good. What is black doing? They're just developing. They're doing great. What's wrong? Not a developing move. So what would be correct? D3. Simple chess. Good. Okay, now let's just say E5 is mildly controversial because it's not a developing move, right? This might also give us an opportunity to talk about moves that undevelop our opponent's pieces. This knight desperately wants to come into the game. Right, it's blocked out. So the move b5 would be cool to undevelop the knight, to keep it stranded on the edge of the board. Right? That's a little fancy, maybe. You could say, Kraai, that's a pawn move. I'm trying to get you guys to see that the next level is just to recognize that developing our pieces is just as important as stopping our opponents from developing. So e5 is simply a move that looks good. The knight comes in, though. Good move. And bishop g5. So we're going to say fine. A higher level, I would give it a little criticism. Fine. Weird. So what is black concerned about with bishop d8? They have a sense that this thing is pinned, right? And this is unprotected. So bishop d8 isn't it. If you want to move your knight, then you should play something like rook e8. And in this position, black has a couple reasonable moves here. Boom, you could ask the bishop a question. You could play rook c8 to play c4. The point there would be to develop your rooks on the open c file. Interesting. I don't know what it does, c4. Here, white could maybe think about moving the knight to get f4 activated to either h4 or h2. Okay. Okay. Inaccuracy, knight h2 is best, but why? Why? It doesn't make any sense. So to me, c4 is a problem just because it's not developing. Okay. It was also a problem when he played it the first time. So all this computer stuff isn't helping at all. No one knows. I don't get it. There's a lot of questions here. There's a lot of questions here. Inaccuracy. Okay, you guys, this is not an annotation. This is a bunch of stuff that's not helping. What do we want in annotation? We just want your appreciation of what you feel was a mistake. If you want to use the computer, do it at the very end. And tell us and yourself, oh, this is something the computer found, right? But what's important for us here is to be thinking about what was going on in the game, right? Okay, good, Teuton. We're hoping to see you at the next level. I realize we're coming up with this book, by the way, called How to Analyze Your Games. And something I want to stress is it's something that anybody can do, whether you're a GM or a 500. And we're seeing that here at the dojo. If you go into the dojo and you look at the cohort games, those are the top great annotated games from each cohort, you can see some people at your level doing great annotations. You can also just go to the database and look up random people at your cohort. You're going to see a lot of well annotated games. You know, we picked 5, but there's many more that are great. Okay, so okay, Jaro's asking what's wrong with D5, and fine, I'll answer it. So yeah, the issue is after either D4 here or ED D4, was what Jaro says is a slightly better isolated queen pawn for white. And the problem is it's hard for black to defend this pawn. Okay, that's the issue. By comparison, if you look at the similar position, here is not so bad for black. And the issue here is it's a far less dynamic position for white, because in this knight d2 variation of the French, we're blocking the bishop. So here it's perfectly acceptable for black to play c5. Okay, so let's go. Nose is here, high nose. Next up we have Keith B. Oh, and this is really cool. I would like to give a shout out to JT, Kevin, and Dave Priest for reviewing some of my games and giving great feedback. Reviewing and annotating the games has helped me see positions a lot clearer and improve my board vision. I think the program works, and a lot of it is because the community works together, especially those in the upper cohorts who help us newbies out. Fantastic. Now, one thing actually I'll say, it's cool that Nose is in the chat too, to talk about this, is I really like these shout outs that people are giving, first of all. Great. And what we want to do is we want to get a more formalized sense of who is doing it. So, for example, Keith is just writing it in the graduation note, but we want the ability of people to say like, oh, you know, Nose helped me or somebody else helped me, and then we get a leaderboard for the people who've helped the most, right? And then other people, higher rated than say JT and Kevin, can come along and then help them, right? So it's a ecosystem. It's really working. And I'd say one of the great things about the dojo, if you want to call it a proof of concept, is at the beginning, from the very beginning, we had the idea of plus minus equals. So the idea that you have somebody above you reviewing your games, somebody at your same level that you're sparring with, talking to, and somebody below you to whom you have to explain yourself, your chess ideas. And at the beginning, we didn't really have enough people there and enough experience, institutional knowledge, what it would mean to help somebody to have it work smoothly. And at the beginning, it was kind of like, oh, I don't even know if this is going to work out. And now we have more people like JT, Kevin, who are, you know, there and know how to help other people, that it's really starting to hum. And if there's any problem, it's that it's the same people. Like Kevin gets noted all the time in these graduation remarks. Anyways, we are going to try, you know, we're always looking ways to improve it, and that's going to be something that we're going to try to roll out. If it's not 3.0, it's going to be around 3.0. So 3.0 is coming out May 1st. Okay, so This is Keith B. Let's give a look. 42 years old, already graduated. 601, beautiful. I like it when, you you hit that. Some people wait a little while, They get to 605, maybe maybe I'll wait till 610 to graduate. Keith is like me, dude. I hit 601, Bobs. I did it. I did it, man. I'm ready to move up. Okay. So, let's look at some activity. Good work. All right, we'll go down one. A lot of work. Notice, I say this every time. When we go up the cohort ladder, we get people having to do more work to make it forward. Makes sense. It's more competitive, right? This is a really good macro diet here that Keith has. Looks good. Let's maybe click the tactics. Looks great. Looks great. Clubs, adult improver, games. This game's very recent. All right. So here we go. Okay. Okay. Fancy. Okay, this move isn't necessarily poor with F3, but I just want to stress we are playing with fire, okay? Because we are not developing our stuff. So more conventional would be knight F3. Now, something I'd like to stress about this move F3 is somebody could say to me, Kraai, doesn't that break all your rules? How can that be a good move? We talked a little earlier about the idea of undeveloping, and it's important to see that the move F3, while odd, does undevelop this knight. And of course is aiming for this monstrous center. D6, good. And now white has some choices. Bishop G5, H6, and now a horrendous move. Bishop takes F6. All right, terrible. So let's talk about why this is a terrible move. By the way, having played similar positions as black, I'm very sensitive to this, and maybe I should just let it be, but I'm going to explain why it's terrible for an under 1,000 player, okay? So, and then I'll explain for an over 1,000 player. The reason it's bad for an under 1,000 player is when you take here, you are developing the queen, right? And the queen's kind of useful there, and, we got to see that black's development is going to be pretty fast. It's going to take a while for white to castle. At an over, I'm going to go ahead and say at an over 2,000 level, the reason this makes me scream is that this bishop is by far white's best piece because all of these pawns are on light squares. So those are the bricks, and the mortar is this dark square bishop. So giving it away makes me want to scream a little bit. Okay, but there you see, there's a reason for the under 1,000 explanation and the over 1,000 explanation. By the way, when I talk about things like best piece and the pawn structure, that's what I'd usually refer to as the third dimension of chess, right? The first is material, and that's what under 1,000 is, not hanging your stuff. Second dimension is time. In the opening, it's possible at the under 1,000 level to master time. The third dimension is quality of position. That kind of thing I was talking about that being white's best piece. That takes a while, right? That's another level. I don't understand Queen E2. You're blocking your stuff. You need to bring your stuff out. A5, totally weird. What would be black's best move? Something like E5 to get this bishop out. Okay. What's wrong with E5, by the way? Not developing. Okay. Weird. So, again, I have a feeling, by the way, that, and this is something, Keith, I want you to pay attention to, that you talk about Queen's Gambit here, I would call it a Nimzo-Indian, and then I'm convinced you saw this move somewhere, some opening course, and now you're in a situation where you don't understand what's going on. And your life would actually be much simpler if you just concentrated on principled moves, which would be what? Knight F3, maybe E3, maybe G3. Get your pieces out, okay? It makes it harder, not easier, when you know opening stuff. And from black, you're going to be playing people for a while that are just giving you time that no one understands why, right? Poor move. Yeah, now queen f6 might have been better, but they were worried about losing this coconut. White black's just giving you monstrous amounts of time, not thinking that these players need to play in the game. Okay, terrible move. Well, how is the game going to be decided? I foretold it'll be decided by someone hanging stuff, and black has hung a bunch of stuff. First they hung their tempi, and then they hung their stuff. They're still not concerned about bringing it out. Okay. Now, let me stress, this is something important. I want you to see that your opponent didn't use any time at all. They're just blitzing through this. So it's kind of like their muscle for thinking hasn't been developed. And you can see in our beautiful time graph here, they're just doing nothing. They weren't even thinking that why have this much time if you're not going to use it? Okay, so that's important to see. You will face many opponents going to give you time and not going to use their own clock time. Right? So, G4, here I took a few minutes to calculate a couple lines where I'd be sacrificing a rook. I'm glad you didn't sacrifice the rook. So let's talk about what you should do. Because G4 doesn't really do anything. You want to activate your pieces. So that looks great to me. Doubling on the D file looks great to me. All that stuff looks beautiful. This doesn't really do it. Doesn't ruin your game. It just doesn't do anything. Look at this move. No respect for the knight. The knight wants to get out, my friend. It wants to get out. And now it's just blocked in forever. Okay, good. 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 Oh, nice move. Good. Good. Dang. Dang. Here my opponent resigned. Okay, there you go. So I think that gives everyone a good sense of what the struggle is, right? We can become religious about time, and then we want to learn not to hang our stuff. And again, learning openings at this level is not helping. It's not. I know people don't believe me, but I think we see in this game that it didn't help. It didn't help white. Okay, good. Let's go back. Next up, we have Pishki. Pishki doesn't have anything to say, but maybe over here. 46-year-old professional in the wine industry based in Tuscany. Oh, I'm going to follow this person. I haven't been drinking much, but if I was in Tuscany right now, hanging out with Pishki, I think I'd be doing some drinking. Yep. Despite harboring a love for chess since childhood, I've never dedicated enough time to refine my skills. Joining the dojo aimed to bolster my theoretical understanding of the game, hoping to conquer my fear of losing alongside a supportive cohort. Brilliant. Okay. So, they joined very recently, and a lot of times what happens is somebody, graduates just on joining. So I think that's kind of what happened here. They did a little bit. Okay. Clubs? The Tuscany club. The Italian club over here. Okay. So games, no games. So I think Pishki just joined. Great. I love this bio. It's a cool picture too. Drinking some wine over there on the side at the local bar. That's pretty nice. That's a pretty nice visual. There's, doing the chess on the 747 and now Pishki drinking some wine. You invite your friend over who's the wine supplier, from the U.S. and wants to learn about Tuscan wines. And you're like, let's sit down and play a game of chess, and then we'll talk about the prices later. Something like that. That's my vision of what Pishki's life is like. Okay, next up we have Captain Blackbeard. Did some good work to make it. I like the name Captain Blackbeard as well. And 820, we're moving up the ladder, my friends. So, activity. Let's go down one. 67 hours. Now, this is well earned. As we've seen, as I've said, when we go up the ladder, we get more and more work being done, more competitive it gets. So, let's just click around a second here. Everyone's first check. Yeah, fantastic. Trusting the dojo, right? Endgame is going to be the algorithm at this point, right? And middle game strategy, master games. Great. Okay. So I'm hopeful, and in terms of just believing in the program, I'd like to believe that Captain Blackbeard, having done this work, not only got him to this point, but then the curve, oh my gosh, will just continue to be straight up as it was here. Clubs. Okay, UK Dojo. Captain Blackbeard. Let's take a look. This game was played fairly recently. Oh, wait a second. That's not an annotation. Let's see if the next one's annotated. Okay. So. Fine. I really don't like doing this as I get paranoid about D5, D4. Okay. So, let me just say, if you develop your stuff, you're going to be fine. You're absolutely okay in this position. Good move. Usually we consider that a mistake because he gives up his strong pawn. Notice that they block their bishop in, so you're doing great. Poor. Controversial. Why? Because they're not developing their stuff. C3. Maybe, but let's just say in terms of our ideal development, taking would make a lot of sense. You know, take that thing. Poor. Why? Because we want you to develop your pieces. What would be a solid developing move? Rook E1. Now you hung a piece. So let's read what you write. This was a move to get coverage and get my bishop out, though it isn't attacking anything. At the moment, it is 16v5. I don't know what that means. On reflection, a bad move. I ought to have defended the knight on e4 again, perhaps with rook e1 or queen e2. Great. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So we've heard it before, but let me just say it again. Your path to over 1,000 will be avoiding mistakes like this. And then how do you do it? A big part of it is going over your games and recognizing where it happened. Okay, so knight e4. Good. Okay. Now this move is controversial because bishop b5 is annoying. Very annoying. King e7. Oh, he's going to take a little wow. He's going to take a little wow. Now, granted, knight d7 has also got its problems because you can start hammering him here. So here we're going to say, well, mistake. Dude should have just gone back. And then there's a lot less problems for black. So I'll give you an exclam with bishop b5 check. I'll give you an exclam for that. Note, that's great. You're bringing all your pieces in. The king is a mess. And even if we were playing GM chess here, we would say something like, oh, well, you know, I don't know exactly what's going on, but although we are down a piece, we certainly have what looks like compensation for our grief. Long-term compensation, because this king isn't going to fix itself anytime soon. Good move. Queen c8. Now, what black could consider here, I just want to turn you guys on to this, is black should have at least considered sacking the queen. You know, because you're already up a piece, you get another piece, you're going to get a rook. Should have thought about it. It's a defensive technique to get out of dodge. Check to the miserable king. Now, it's a little interesting about check to the miserable. It's just a good move. We're going to call that a good move. And he goes back. And now you go for it. Bam! Oh, this is spicy. This is spicy. Okay, let's read what you write. Knight coming in for the kill or even a fork with his rook on h8. I considered advancing Derek the d-pawn. By the way, that's great. I came up with Federico the f-pawn, and I didn't actually know that Derek the d-pawn was called Derek, so this is new to me. Covered by the bishop, but the other knight could have taken him. I used the right click to color the board that my pieces cover and decided against it. And discovered that unless he realizes what I am up to, I ought to be good to go. Okay. Boom, boom. And I have a bad feeling what happened to this guy. Bam! Checkmate! Nice. So, genius. Now, I want to say something, though. Let's stare at this position for a second. While it's true that it was certainly a blunder to play bishop a6, we have some real interesting questions, I think, about what is the evaluation of this position. Is black toast? Honestly, it's going to be a close one. And we should try to examine, like, well, what could he have done? You know? There's some real interesting questions here. I'm thinking bishop takes d6 is what we should analyze, you know, to try to figure out maybe can black get out of this. Because black's up a lot of material. Maybe there's a way to Houdini themselves out of this thing. For example, if this and then this, we have this amazing little move, and we touch this coconut and that coconut, and maybe we don't die completely. Okay, Captain Bluebeard, that was great, and this was cool. That was a cool trick, right? Something else I want you to see is we're all going to hang something someday. Even if you become a GM, you'll still hang stuff sometimes. And if you kind of paid attention to the principles at this level and you hang something, a lot of times there'll be enough pressure to give black grief. And in this case, I want you to see that taking the knight cost him a tempo, and then defending the knight is going to cost them another tempo. Now, obviously, this was a mistake, but what I'm trying to get you to see is that extra time is what created the conditions for you to start messing with them with a move like bishop b5, right? Good. So you can see how the dimensions of material and time are interconnected. So, good. Let's go back and we'll look at Max Biermann. And Max Biermann is a hero of the dojo. I'm actually meeting with Max in an hour and a half. And what Max has done for the dojo is something pretty amazing. Max has done a statistical analysis of all of our business, and in particular what we're interested in, this is what the meeting's going to be about, is can we identify a completion rate for every requirement in the dojo? Can we identify, let's call it points per box? This is what we used to have. We used to have, this thing began as a very unuser-friendly Google sheet, and there were little boxes, and you would click them. And at that stage, we did do a statistical analysis, and we tried to identify, well, what box can you check that then produces the most rating gain? How can, in terms of correlation? Back then, it was the classical game, you know, long time control. And that wasn't just analyzing, it was just playing it. That was the one most correlated to rating game. It was a little surprise to me, and so I'm hoping that we'll get more surprises. Because I think it's fascinating when statistics can prove you wrong about your assumptions. All right, let's read what Max says. This one kind of came out of nowhere. I came into this cohort and immediately dropped down to 999. Went on a heater of a week to gain 75. Didn't play any rapid for a week. Had surgery. It wasn't sugary, surgery. So didn't do any chess except drug-addled blitz and just hemorrhaged visualization and calculation. Coming back from appendectomy, I have won 20 of 28, and the default is a 30-0 at this point. It's been feeling like slow blitz, where I pick a move, can't really calculate, feel like it's strategically good, and then it seemed to work out. I also blundered a ton, but found out that people at my level tend to slack off when they have a lead. Correct. I bet I had 5 games where I was decidedly down and just kept grinding until they biffed it. In the last 90 days, I'm up 233 points and I'm 3-4 against 1,200 rated opponents. I do think I'm going to have to start Polgar and EFCW over again to get my calculation and visualization back, but I think it'll come back quickly. Looking forward to continued progress. Hi, Quad XE. Well, that was a great summation of the great Max Bierman. Max Bierman, by the way, this is a trivia question. He's a fish squeezer. What is a fish squeezer? When he said it, I knew what he meant. But do you know what a fish squeezer is? I have a feeling when we click on his profile, we're going to see what a fish squeezer is. He's in fishery. I think they got to do a... See, he learned stats to do stats on fishies, you know? And he's going out there, he's squeezing them. You know, give them a little squeeze, noting what color they are. They got the glassy eye. They look stoned. You know, he's doing that kind of stats on the fishies and then using his knowledge of stats to help us at the dojo and using his knowledge of the training program. Look at that crushing graduation here. Let's look at this. Look at this rating graph, dude. Just monstrous. Space Force vet. It's amazing. This dude's amazing. Okay, so let's look at how Max did it. 18 hours. Okay, that's all looking pretty good. Looking great. Less tactics than we normally see at this level, right? Okay. We got some clubs, maybe an Oregon club. Portland Dojo. There we go. Nice. So, games. We've got several. This one's pretty recent. Yesterday. Okay, so as he mentioned, struggling with visualization and calculation. Okay, system 2. System 2 just means you're thinking longer instead of making impulsive, quick decisions. Good. Good. Fine. Fine. A little weird. Okay, what's a little weird is you're setting yourself up to get whacked with a tempo. So for that reason, we'd rather take back with a pawn. Okay, notice we lost a full amount of time there. So, and I want you to see, the problem is not that this was a great move on knight c6. The problem was when you took here, you enabled that knight c6. Now, when you go back, you don't have to go all the way back. Maybe here, maybe here. And the reason is that we would like to keep our rooks connected eventually. Our knight will move soon enough. And then we want those rooks to be connected. Okay. You know I don't like it. Now, at this point, it might not be entirely obvious what the developing move is, but I like queen e2 followed by a rook to d1. A little weird. I still want queen e2. And that's just dropping the pawn. So we got to give that a question mark. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, good developing move. Okay. This one, I don't know, you're encouraging him. I don't know if it's great for him to take the knight, but you are encouraging him to do so. Maybe a little more to the point might be bishop e5. Knight e4 might be annoying to us. Good move. Oh, that wasn't it. So here we are with rook a d1, and we're going to lose a pawn no matter what. But one of these pawns is what I mean. But here's our moment to think and be like, well, boss, what can I do? And I want you to see that with rook a1, well, you did think 2 minutes. Okay. This would be a moment, though, in your game analysis to go back and be like, well, what could I have done? And you actually have a really nice move here. You can play bishop takes pawn. It's a valuable pawn in front of their king. And of course, if they take this way, we're going to slay, as the kids say today. We're going to slay their pawn, their knight, and their king structure. So, by the way, this is passive. If we're going to move our rook back, you know, let's put it somewhere active. C4 could be a thought. This is called rallying the wagons, what you're doing. Focusing the rook, but targeting the pawn on c3. Now, this is controversial because you're inviting this rook to come downtown. I don't want that rook to come downtown. I have no desire for that rook to come downtown. Okay, so they gave you a pawn. Just the way I drew it up, okay? Because they didn't come downtown. They didn't come downtown. Now, let's stress that knight is now miserable over there on h5. Okay, this one makes me squeamish because you're missing rook c5 targeting this coconut. And here, I don't want to let him take on c2. It's not just the pawn, it's also this rook is going to be activated when they do so. So we could make this miserable looking move just to protect it and then move the bishop somewhere. Okay, good. Well, put your rook down there, buddy. Put it down there. Now, something we should say about black is they need to move their knight back pronto, and they're not doing it. They're just hanging the knight now. Bam! Thank you very much. Okay, good. Thank you. Fine. Fine. Thank you. And it's a yard sale over here, right? We're just taking all these person's coconuts. Yeah, this is looking great. Tries to mate you in a variety of ways, but I'm afraid we are the one. So, that was really good. Max is going to make it very quickly now, really has, to, well, going to make it to 1,000. And with those games, what I want to say is religiosity about time, right? It's basically the same advice I give everybody in the under 1,000 cohort, but religiosity about time. And then what you're saying about visualization is true and can be expressed in a number of different ways, one of which is, hey, not hanging our stuff is what the key thing is going on here. So, what I need to do now, okay, is I need to grab the, we're gonna review two games here, one by Stan and one by Chess Padawan. So this is a new feature in the dojo. You can submit a game for review, and oh my lord, these ones have been sitting there for a while, Kraai. What's wrong with you? Anyways, it's not just me, it's Kostya and David are supposed to do these too. In any case, you can submit a game for review. There's a little bit of cost involved. It's okay. And we will take a look. And so here we're going to do Stan, and then we're going to do Chess Padawan. And then I'm going to end this amazing stream because I got to go meet with Max to talk about Chess Dojo stats. Okay, so here first, let's click here. This is the game. And this is cool. My first ever OTB game. So we got 130. Let's see if we got a time graph. Beautiful. They got more time at move 40. By the way, so I haven't seen the game at all yet, but this is a good looking time graph from both sides. You could see this in a GM level game, right? They felt confident in their opening up until move 7. Then they started to think and they thought, well, notice they were really using their time. Here it was a little crunchy, right? It happens in GM level games too. They got some time and then white stopped thinking. We'll see how this goes. Okay, played into a losing endgame. But given the fight I delivered, I'm very pleased with my performance. If my analysis was correct, quite tragic though, because I missed several knockouts. Time control of the tournament was 90 plus 30. That's where we see this jump. Okay, this is great. And they get 30 seconds extra a move. Okay, so we'll go back here. Oh, and you know what I was doing? There was so many games today that I looked at, and I'm supposed to hit game reviewed, so they get a notification. I really blew it there. I really blew it there. It's new. It's new, Jack. I'm working on it, buddy. I'll tell you what, I'm going to hit game reviewed, even though I haven't done it yet, just so I don't forget. Okay, so let's look. This is Stan. Fine. Fine. Okay, so let's just say some obvious stuff. With the move e6, the Caro player is going into a French. It's probably their best move. And one of the reasons I actually recommended this move, dc5, in my aggressive repertoire for white, according to the dojo, this dc5 move, is because e6 is the best move, we want to at least make these Caro players not laugh at the French players, because now they've got the bad bishop. Why do the Caro players play c6? Because they don't want their bishop to be bad. They want to get that pawn to d5. They don't want their bishop to be bad, not realizing that their knight is bad. Okay. So in any case, we have a traditional French structure now, and a3 isn't it, because that's a loss of time. Now, black takes, and white immediately plays the aggressive queen g4. So, boom, fancy. Something we should stress is we are not in a particular hurry to take yet, and we could also play knight c6. Okay. And I'm very pumped on this move. Apparently, this is a book move, this knight e7. However, I just want to say I like it a lot, because what it does is shows that black is more interested in developing than hanging on to their pawns, and gives this variation here. Genius. So, big problem with the pawn on f2, and on queen h4, it's not going to work out because of knight f5. So that was a cool variation. Okay, great. Knight e7, bishop d3, and now we get to castle. Knight f3, but now we do have a very specific problem. Do the players see the bishop h7 is a big threat? I'm going to go ahead and say it probably is. Sometimes called the Greek gift. Both players moving super fast still. As I was out of book, I took a longer think here. Good. Let's see how long they thought. Good, 14 minutes. I don't remember my thoughts at this point, but given white's pieces aligned on my king, I probably figured I want to put pieces in front of my king and hope I don't get mated. Okay. So, here's the issue. Bishop h7, let's just make a move. Bishop h7 is the problemito, because in this position, it's really hard to get out of dodge. Now, sometimes these positions aren't entirely lost, but we don't want to do this even if they aren't, because at the minimum, white has a draw with queen s7, so we're not interested. That brings us back to the position. Do we want to play knight g6 or f5? Now, in general, I would say we want to play f5, even if it looks a little scary, because we want to have lateral protection to our king side. Notice the white pieces rightly have control over their side of the board. The pawn is giving white this edge in space. Doesn't mean it was bad for us to castle there, but it means, hey, we better get some lateral support, because it's very hard for our pieces to get communication over there. Now, maybe knight g6 is okay, but I'm going to say I like f5. Okay, h4. This person is coming at you, my friend. So, controversial move from white, okay, because they aren't developing. Now, what is the white problem going to be? It's going to be defending this pawn. h4 makes a lot of sense. Notice, however, that once h5 happens, that trick with bishop h7, queen h5 doesn't work anymore. So now the game has become incredibly violent and concrete. My sense for white is you probably want to do this first, buddy, because you're going to need this bishop to play bishop b2. And you can wait on h4. The most significant feature in the position for you will be making sure f5 isn't such a meaningful thing. Bishop b2 makes a lot of sense here. And one madness variation that we could think of here is f5, ef, e5. And I'm just going to admit I don't know what's happening. I just know this is full madness. Okay? And very typical of this kind of position. So let's look at what happens. h4, knight c6, and now white blunders with bishop g6. Now, when I say blunder, what I want to be clear on is because they didn't watch out for their e-pawn, they are in a bad situation. If you have to play bishop g6, though, it's important to see that your whole strategic setup is done for, because you have lost your good bishop. You have given the rook scope. And remember how we were talking about the rook getting lateral protection of the king? Oh, now our king is not going to get mated, or at least it's going to be very difficult for us to get mated. Okay, so we are doing great. Okay, white pushes his luck with h5. So let's talk a little bit. Notice that the problem here is a slightly more advanced version of what we saw in the under 1000s, namely, people not appreciating how important time is, right? So this whole h5 stuff is like, what about these guys? What about these guys? And what about your poor king, buddy? What about your poor king? Okay, so you like g5, and very interesting position. I believe in your position a lot here, even if I don't know exactly what to do yet. Okay. Now, my default move here for you would be queen c7, just in the belief that, when I say default, I just mean the first move I would look at, because the development lead should translate into crushing this poor fool. Okay, so let's say hg, knight takes e5. If they take here, we just move away and say thank you very much. Is it complicated? Yes, 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 it's complicated. I'm not going to deny it's not complicated. Okay, but that's the idea with queen c7. Okay, g5, maybe. I don't really like giving the pawn if I don't have to. And maybe they could play something else here. But okay, let's just look at what happened. Queen c7. And I like your move. And this makes a lot of sense to me. My opponent told me in the postmortem that he'd overlooked this combination that wins the pawn back. And if I was his coach, what I would tell him is, bows. You haven't developed your stuff, and you should expect to get hurt. It's no longer surprising. Notice, we're not getting mated anymore. We have full, beautiful control of our king. Okay. I don't like c3, by the way, because it doesn't develop. Now, do I have a better move? Well, I would like to develop. I would like to play either knight d2 or castles, right? I do not want to play this, because now white has to respond, and it's again going to be our move. Bishop e3, and now you play bishop d7. Okay, so bishop d7. I think that's probably fine. Maybe I'll add that another very typical Frenchy plan would be to move your bishop somewhere and play e5. Poor move. Now, something I want to stress is at this level, here we're talking about the 1400 level, right? What I often see as a coach is that when they ascribe the failure of a move like g3, they're inevitably going to say something like weakening of the king, or maybe they'll say weakening of the light squares, instead of the main thing. What is the main problem? It is time. These people are not playing. They are sitting on the bench. They must move. What was the correct move? Knight d2 or castles, but you must start getting your pieces moving. g3, I don't know. You know, maybe there's some high fancy flying thing of, I don't know. Sometimes I'm a good chess psychologist, and honestly, maybe if I thought about it really a long time, I could figure out what g3 is about, but I don't know. a6. So you are just as guilty. Okay? Now, one thing I want you to see, and we've talked about this kind of throughout the show, is we need to become religious about time, right? And a6 is a full loss of that religiosity. So, in this position, actually, Stan, if you were watching this, take a moment and just imagine, okay, well, like what would be a cool move for black in this position? How could I do great things? For me, the first thing that came to mind was, well, I could protect the pawn in a variety of ways and intend that this bishop, who is now a very angry man, by the way, very angry because it's unopposed, and I would love to keep them from castling. Oh, it'd just be so, so sweet. Okay? So that would be the first thing. Maybe you play queen d6, rook a e8, and then move the bishop. So, the next move, though, is like, oh, you want to take it? Be my guest, buddy. You want to take it? That's fine. We're going to call this a developing move, and then in short order, this bad boy is coming here, and this king is going to get mated. In fact, I think we're already threatening things like bishop g3. It's full mate. Mate is happening. Mate is now happening to this dude. Right? Stan is in the chat. Beautiful. So this is a good learning moment, and I just want you to see that this kind of mistake, you're making it now. You can get rid of this mistake, and the thing to realize is you're at a loss. You don't know what to do. Let's actually look at your time here. You spent 3 minutes. This is the moment to think a little deeper, right? Because a6, it almost looks like you're worried about the a pawn. First of all, if they take the a pawn, they're going to lose the bishop. But more importantly, white is in no position to be taking the a pawn anytime soon. He's getting mated. He's getting mated on the light squares. Here would be another move to consider if you want to move the bishop next, right? So you don't have to be that fancy to find bishop b5, but think about it and be like, well, I want to play bishop b5, right? Okay, let's carry on. So a6. Good move by white. They finally did it. Bishop f6. Okay. Queen d1. They're terrified about e5. Okay, good. I like it. Good. I like it. We should probably say, too, that you could just play e5 because this is also a great diagonal. However, the aesthetic joy, that you've got here with this setup, it can't be denied. I mean, there's no GM IM wouldn't just love to see this position. Look at this position. Look at those bishops. Fantastic. Knight f3. Not sure what it's doing, but I also don't know what white should do. Queen d7, beautiful. Now we're going to look at the light squares. By the way, in this position, you should tell yourself that this is the more deadly bishop, not just because of those light squares, but because this bishop has a counterpart, right? So we are interested in this light square bishop being the beast. Obviously, it's a loss of time. Now we're going to look. I haven't seen what you've done yet, but you have a variety of moves where we should be looking to come at the king. So let's see what you did. Good move, simple and strong. Painfully sad, right? Just painfully sad. Now, we want a good building move here. D4. Can it be wrong? I'm going to say no, it can't be wrong. G4, opening, that's what we call opening the kimono, right? So I get it, they don't like your queen there, but they're making more problems than they're solving. Okay. Bishop D8, I can't say that that's not a bad move. You probably have other things, I like that one. King H8, not hugely thrilled. Is it terrible? No. More natural, I think, would just be to go ahead and say, give me that thing. F3, good move. Good move. Tried to block you off. Now this is why we needed that bishop C7. B5, don't like it. Don't like it. So, Stan, something about this we get religion about is A6 didn't do anything, and B5 really doesn't do it either. Maybe you're worried about knight C4, but we need to start killing the king, and that bishop is the best defender. So we got to do bishop C7. We still got to do bishop C7. And now notice your bishop is fulfilling a passive role on B6 instead of going after the king, which is our strongest department. I like rook A E1 better, and I'll explain why. Because knight E4 is generally the square we want, and you correctly note that rook F3 is now amazing, pointing to the fact that the E4 square is going to be the square that's going to save white, because then there's going to be no entrance into, say, rook E3. So this is a great combination that you analyze here. Fantastic. Notice that it's about the white king position, but also, maybe more importantly, that you now complete, I was going to do some kind of Star Wars voice, you know. You complete the transformation where you take all of their coconuts and the light squares. So this one becomes really strong. Now, I'm just realizing maybe it doesn't work. Could they play queen takes F3? It gives me concerns, because this queen F8 thing is something I at least have to worry about, right? So we'd want to analyze queen F3, and I'm now officially a little nervous about this. Yeah, I'm nervous. So I'm not. Rook F3 is on a chess aesthetic point of view absolutely the right thing. I just don't know what's going to happen after queen F3. I don't know about bishop E4. There's this queen F8 problem. That's the problem with bishop E4. Yeah. So H6, maybe the right move if rook F3 doesn't work. And now what should they do? Rook over, rook over, rook over. King here, and I think your rook F3 is now officially strong. Right? By the way, this is a good one to just think about positional compensation for the exchange. Let's say queen, bishop, queen. It's not 100% over yet, but it's important to see that your position is massive. Even if you had to trade queens, it's still massive because you're getting this coconut running. And notice, because he's on a light square, can't get touched, and the bishop's just so strong. I did a position from Fisher Larson with two bishops against a rook, and it was just so so glorious. Anyways, hopefully that'll come out, and that just reminded me of that kind of position that could go down here. B3, what is it? Loss of time? Also not sensing the rook F3 problem. I don't know what it does. And now I would say that's pushing their luck. They need to be thinking about defending that E4 square. Okay, wait a second. I have tactical questions. Let's look. Does this work? And then that's our problem, I guess. Bummer. Okay. Because now our rook is hanging. We can't do queen d6. I think white's playing really loose here. You're going after, I don't even know. Okay, you're going after the pawn. Knight c5 worries me. Now, by the way, you're just kind of making threats here and there. We've kind of lost a lot of the push in the position. Now you're saying bishop c4, knight g5. That's a hell of a move. That's an amazing move. That's amazing. You saw it too. So you defended it? Okay. I criticized queen d7 from a strategic standpoint, but tactically we definitely needed to stop that knight g5 thing. Okay. Good. At least in an idealistic sense, it's good. Okay, the game has now got to a point where it's no longer simple what's happening. Now, Stan, I wanted you to see something. We have now got to our 30 minutes, and I see what happened here. So everyone should notice who's watching this game, both players, especially Stan, is in time pressure here. And what do the moves look like? They look a lot like a blitz game. So Stan had a bunch of chances when White gave him 1,000 tempi early on in the game. And then in time pressure, that kind of slipped, right? There's a lot of things that happened here, like no bishop c7 that made the advantage slip. And that's very typical even in GM play, all right? So now it's like, let's just say we're rebooting the game here, and White, we have to think, is now doing great. They're up a pawn, and they got a beautiful knight on e4. Rook ef8. And now White gets too frisky with knight d6. By the way, it's a bummer what happened to our beautiful unopposed bishop, because now it's not doing that much. And you're absolutely right. Knight d2 makes sense. Yeah. This is a horrendous move. And rook f3 is correct. Now, let's read what you write, because you played rook f4. I was afraid to isolate my pawns and thought I might be able to hold a pawn down endgame with bishop versus knight. But I could have traded into a rook endgame with equal pawns and White's king cut off. Okay, now let me stress. Let's just think about this position for a second before we talk tactics. The only value of these rooks strategically is that they gain activity somewhere on the f-file, right? If you do not take, they have no activity, right? So here they got nothing. They're not doing anything. So we have to take, and you say rook a3, White's a little better. I don't know. I don't know why White's better, honestly. Seems like you're doing fine. Honestly, maybe I'd rather be black. I don't know. I just know that your rooks are now amazingly active. And in any kind of ending, but especially rook endgames, a premium has to be placed on activity. And here, right, with this, you're like worried about your coconut instead of your activity. Rook e4. Okay. Now, question, are you toast? I think you are. Yeah. Because your pawn on a6 is a victim, there's no counterplay, and your king on h8 is terrible. Okay. Okay, at least we're trying to hang on. Poor move. Okay, so correct would definitely be to march the king in. I don't understand. Let's see what happens. Okay. We're still lost, but we might have some weird chance. The problem with bishop c6 is now knight c5, he wins the coconut for sure. Okay. I resigned here. I have to pick up the h-pawn meanwhile White wins my queenside. I would have played on just because I haven't been convinced by your opponent's play. But yeah, it is lost. Okay. So, Stan, good annotation and a good game. And I think the main thing I want you to see is that, let's say you've been watching this whole show, for example, on the under 1,000. I want you to see that on a cruder level, they're making the same mistake that you and your opponent are making. So it might well be that this is some fancy computer move that your opponent knows about, and apparently you even know about it too. But highfalutin, it is, right? Then when we get to this situation, your opponent doesn't realize that bishop takes g6 would be incredibly horrific from a strategic point of view. Oh no! And what happens is they start giving you time. Oh God, that was bad. And not realizing, oh no, my pieces, they need to come out. White isn't getting it at all. Good move. C3, not getting it, right? G3, not getting it, and A6, you not getting it. So that sense of religiosity about time is really going to pay off. Notice now we're in a middle game, right? And in the middle game, the question of time to do what is a little bit more interesting, right? Because we don't always, yeah, like in the opening, it's time to get our pieces out. Here, it's like, oh, we have some time. White owes us the knight move, and then the king has real problems. And the main thing I think I'd be interested in here is, can I prevent the king from ever castling? Honestly, it looks like I'm going to, especially with the move bishop b5. I'm not worried about queen takes e6 because that'll just open more lines for the pieces. But again, if you're not comfortable with that, you can play moves like rook f5, queen d6, or something to protect the pawn, and then play bishop b5 with a fantastic game, right? But just a6 doesn't do it. Oh, queen d1 wasn't it. I'll tell you that. That wasn't it. Look at that. That was a beautiful position. It's just a beautiful position. Yeah. Oh, man. Maybe just one more quick thought before I get out of here. You write about queen d3. I like it, but I do think you are strategically winning in this position. And the thing that you needed to see is that because white is now committed to putting the pawns on the light squares, it makes this bishop a premium, right? These are the bricks, and this bishop is the mortar. So we must start thinking about trading off this bishop for this one to get at the dark squares over here, and then we have to find a way to wiggle ourselves onto this f3 square. In a lot of ways, that continues throughout the game where we needed to get the rook penetrated to the f3 square. Okay, Stan, that was great. So, is the Boomer GM going to be able to find his way back to the business? We're going to see. Let's see here. Boom, I think he can. I think Boomer GM can do this. So, amazingly, Jack programmed this, so I just hit game reviewed, and then this one shows up immediately as being the only one left. So we're going to click on Chess Padawan. This is a slightly higher cohort, TD at the Charlotte Chess Center. Beautiful. I got to play there, got invited to play back. I couldn't go right away. I'll be back. I'll be back. So, USCF has unfortunately crashed a little bit. And boss, you're in the wrong page. You're supposed to go here, and you're supposed to click that. Okay. So Chess Center Sunday Classical. Okay. The clock times, I guess, aren't there. So, all right. I love this variation. When I was a kid, this was not seen as an amazing variation for black, and now it's just so cool. It fits all my prejudices about chess too, because really we're getting a full developing move with ef6, and that pawn will prevent us from getting mated. It's just like an extra pawn in front of our king. Genius. Okay. When I was a kid, by the way, I played this variation. That was what I did. Now, I don't know if the computer likes it, but also a weird and interesting variation. Good. Okay, this is theory, but it's obviously not the happiest thing for white to play. Good move. Yeah, nice. And I've talked about this. Actually, I did a video for we had this part of the dojo repertoire for black. By the way, eventually what we're going to want to do is have a repertoire for all of the major openings. But anyways, I did the one for the Caro-Kann, and I advocated this move. I love it. It's paradoxical, and the simple point is to say, I've got more pawns in front of my king buddy. You are not the one mating me, and this H pawn, if I'm going to move it, let's go to H5, baby. Let's push them. Let's get ready to go. All right, here we go. Bishop B3, Knight D7. Good move. Now, a problem that I've seen in other dojo games in this position is black needs to understand, in general, first of all, that in the Caro, this is your worst piece. You got to fix him. And in this variation, we need to put him on F8 like you do here. Great. It might seem weird at first, but he's out of the way. He's defending your king, and there's a variety of ways now that he can come into the game to be useful. Let's say some obvious things. Opposite sides castling. It's going to be violent. The value of time is going to go up. That means whoever starts getting the initiative is really going to start rolling. Notice as well, if the pawn on H5, you would sometimes, you wouldn't, opposite sides castling, you wouldn't want that in front of your king kind of hanging out there. But fine, that pawn can take care of himself. King B1, okay. And now B5. And you're right. This is a mistake, and Bishop B6 is much better to develop a piece. This is a very committal move that I wanted to use to prevent C4, but the issue is that he can play D5 now. Okay. So I want to stress that if D5 weren't possible, B5 is the correct strategic idea. And it's kind of surprising that D5 is a good move. But it makes a lot of sense. It also makes sense for white in the sense that this piece gets the D4 square. So you'll probably get this position again, by the way, or something very similar to it. And besides Bishop E6, we can imagine moves like Queen C7. Yeah, but Bishop E6 is fine. B5, though, besides, it's more of a tactical miss than a strategic miss because it is in general, the kind of thing you want to be looking for. You want to launch yourself at that white king. Okay, Bishop B7, and now we might be toast, actually, with ED and Knight D4. Bishop F4, that doesn't, maybe. Okay, so it was an incorrect move, yeah. So better was Knight D4, and maybe white is a little bit better. There's still some questions to be asked. But white looks like that looks like the right move for white. So Bishop F4, and now we lose our minds with King H8. But white doesn't understand why. So Bishop F4, and you noted Bishop F4, Bishop H7, snippos, trickos, crickos, and then we have to continue Knight F4, Bishop E4. Thank you very much. Great variation, and when you say black is up 2 pawns, a little confusing to me. That might be like the computer evaluation, like black is up 2 pawns because we have this trick. But the variation definitely needs to be continued to Bishop E4, just so that we see exactly, because that's the thing you missed, right? That's the thing white missed too, honestly, when they played Bishop F4. And this kind of tactical breakdown is, I think, what we could consider a feature of improving at this level. Right? So you're going from 1600 up to 2000, and seeing this kind of thing is what's important. And white is trying to break you down here and then just doesn't get it. Oh my Lord. They just don't get it, right? Now you're fine. Now no problemo. Queen b8, that's a weird move. So, you talked about knight d4. Makes sense. Bishop b5 would also make sense. One of those moves. But this move, you should tell us why. Right? Why are we doing this move? Queen c5 certainly is the more natural move, right? Yeah. Yeah. So try to imagine, like, why did we do it? Why not queen c5? Kind of weird. I still don't know why they're not doing knight d4. Good. Now knight d4. Yeah, so knight d4, fine. cd. And then you said king g8, but at least to my naive eye, queen b7 is the one I want, just so that I have the option. Well, I want to connect the rooks. I want to control this square, you know, all that nice stuff. So rook c8. Weird. And now Kraai talked all that smack about the h5 pawn, but now we have legitimate problems in addition to being down a pawn. Now you talk about queen b7 being bad, but I think you're in big trouble here. Yeah. So you talked about queen e5. And what, at a minimum, this would do is force your opponent to prove themselves in a nice middle game. Now, or end game with queen e5. It still looks bad news, though. It still looks bad news. Yeah, maybe queen e8. I don't know, but this looks nasty. This endgame also looks nasty, though, because this pawn is such a weakness, and white's got a simple plan of doubling the trouble, you know? Okay, so queen b7. Yeah, I know it's sad. King g8. And our problem is, maybe you initially thought bishop g8, but you missed bishop e4. If so, put it in your notes. Check to the miserable king. It's not fun. Not fun. Might as well. Oh, man. There's a shock. I'm sure this is a computer variation, but that's a nice one. Look at that one. Checkmate. Good. Okay, so a couple things. First, I want to say that your play in the opening, I really like up to this move. And one of the reasons I like it is I've reviewed other dojo games that have used this setup, and they have been reluctant to fix the knight and instead played things like bishop f5 and bishop e6 before the knight was fixed. This guy doesn't know yet where to go, right? So I would call this position dynamically equal. I will say I think you will get this position again. And it's fun. It's just a fun position where white will have as many problems as you do. In fact, I would still want to be black. I feel it's easier to play black. Though, of course, by the way, I could imagine myself playing b5, not seeing d5. Yeah, definitely in a blitz game. b5 would be one of the first things I think of here. The other thing I always want to shout out, just in terms of strategically understanding the position, the old-timers didn't like this position because they were saying to themselves things like, oh, white will get a connect or get a pass pawn later, whereas black can't get a pass pawn. Now, that's true, but it's also a very abstract thing, and especially when we recognize that then the deeper truth is, if white castles kingside, we're going to wail on him over there. And if he goes queenside, unless we trade out to an endgame, that pass pawn isn't going to be a reality anytime soon. So it's kind of like an interesting strategic phantom, if you will, of that pass pawn being created being such a